Do you want more? More time, more balance, more love, more sex, more money, more real, and less bullshit? This is the Women Wanting More podcast with Dr. Karen Osborne. Real life, real stories, plus real tips to get you more of what you want.
All right, sisters, so this is a very special podcast episode. This is actually an interview with my very good friend, Jill Ethier, who wrote a book called When the Meaning is Lost. And it is a powerful book about loss, Jill's story through it. And, you know, it's something that I had a chance, you're going to hear about it in the interview that we did together. Actually, it is a Facebook Live. And then we decided to turn this into a podcast so you can also listen to it. So I'm going to have in the links for the show notes. There'll be, you can actually watch the Facebook Live version of this. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of a tee up to have you know this is really the first guest interview. I know I had some interviews with women that came through one of my live events called The Evolution. And those were kind of back-end. I was like, oh, maybe we should make these into podcast episodes. But this is the first really intentional one I've ever done as a guest. As you know, this is mostly solo episodes, so I don't normally do this style of interview at all, nor do I plan on doing any more of them. But I just knew after I had the chance to read one of the drafts of Jill's book that her message, this needs to get out there. And so yeah, take a listen and enjoy this very special interview. And then you'll hear from me again at the very, very end of the episode. So Facebook Live today. Now, this is my good friend Jill Ethier, who we have known each other for like 2 years now. Hey, Jill, 2 years. We met through a group coaching program and have stayed connected ever since. And I coached with Jill for the last 6 months as well, too, and she is brilliant. But I wanted to have this conversation with Jill today about a book that Jill put out. Jill, when was the book launched? 6 weeks ago?
At the end of January.
End of January? Okay. 2 months, a little bit over 2 months, right? Which is this one, which is called When the Meaning is Lost. And I had, which is now available on Amazon, and I had the privilege and honor, and Jill sent me kind of like an early draft. I was like, would you read this? I'm like, of course I would. And at the time, this show, because we've talked about this as well too, where it's just like, this is a really important thing to share. And so, and with recently what's happened obviously in our country and how many young lives were lost in that very, very tragic and very sad bus accident. Jill's right in Saskatchewan. She's like in the heart of all this as well too. It was like when I actually messaged her, I'm like, do you still want to have, because we set this interview up like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And we're like, do we still want this conversation? It's like, yeah, I think it needs to happen. I think it's still really raw for everybody right now. But, oh, cool, Melissa, you got yours in the mail. I'm so glad. But when I read it, so even outside of that, when I first read it, I just said to Jill, I'm like, I haven't gone through some of the losses that you have, Jill, and you share in your book. And I'll have you just, touch a little bit on that and why you wrote the book and all of it. But there was something that I really saw for loss in me. And what I thought was such a bigger conversation to have is that whether it's, again, the significant loss of all those young lives on that bus and the families that are affected, whether it's loss and death in another way, whether it's loss of a miscarriage, loss for me was infertility, everybody experiences loss. And so although I know that Jill kind of speaks into that a little bit more with your experiences than Jill, that I really do feel this is a message that everybody needs to hear. And so why don't you first then, Jill, just what really inspired you to write? I mean, I know all this stuff, but everyone else to kind of see, what inspired you to write the book? What kind of life experiences led up to you saying, man, I have to get this message out?
So I started writing. So my baby died almost 12 years ago. And after she died, I started writing because I felt like at some point I was going to want to, I was going to use it. I didn't know. And think you guys, this is now almost 12 years later. And I had bits and pieces and different Word documents and all of that happen. And then a few years ago, I got really, really sick. And I realized that what I had learned through the journey of grief and the void and everything you experience when somebody close to you dies, somebody important to you dies, that it also applied to when I lost my health. I went through, there was a grieving process that happened because I couldn't do the things that I could do anymore, right? I wasn't able to show up in the world on a daily basis the same way. And I had to redefine how I was going to live again, right? Because I couldn't do things in the same way, and it was different. And so I drew on all of those things that I'd learned about myself when my baby died, right? The experience of going through that grief and that loss and picking my life up again, because you had to choose. On the day she died, I made a promise to her that I would live fully. Like, I would live in her honor. I would do whatever I felt I was called to do. And I found myself, when I became really ill, having to do the same sort of thing again, having to recreate how I was going to live my life. So kind of fast forward to just over a year ago, and I have a daughter who is 18, and a year ago, her best friend was killed in a tragic accident. And I was thrown into this situation of helping her grieve heavily for her best friend, her soulmate. This was the guy that Snapchatted all day long. The guy who 7 a.m, good morning, Mackenzie. 11, I think it's 11 p.m. It could probably be midnight or 1. Good night, Mackenzie. I'll see you in the morning, right? All day. And all of a sudden I'm walking my oldest daughter through this grief. And what I'm drawing on is everything I learned from when my baby died, and even what I learned from when I lost my health, right? Of, you've got to choose to move forward. You've got to choose how you're going to live again. There is this thing that happens, this void that happens, and like the world doesn't feel familiar anymore. And you have to learn to live in it again, right? So it was after he died, it was just time to sit down and write the whole book, because it wasn't just about, me losing my baby. It wasn't about me losing my health, but it just applies to any experience in your life that you've had where like you've lost meaning, where something has happened that's created a void, where nothing is the same, where it's created that whole experience of like before and after, right? Like this was before, this is after. Same for you with your infertility, right? It's not something you expected to go through, and there's a journey of deciding what your good life is going to live like or be like after that. So I decided to finally sit down and finish the book, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Writing is no joke, man. Like it is a journey in and of itself. And then I had to get over a lot of, is this relevant to people? And as I started and finally hit publish, which you helped me do, because it's like, could you just ship it already?
Ship that thing, put it out. Yeah.
I realized that it really crossed borders of, I had to put my story in the book, because I wanted to talk about what I learned about life, right? So the stories are there, but it crossed boundaries of like, people would get a hold of me and say, my stories aren't the same as yours, but what you're saying about grief makes sense to me, because that's what it's like. What you're saying about loss makes sense. What you're saying about not knowing what to do next is everything I experienced, right? So I've realized that, the book did what I wanted it to do, in the sense of, doesn't matter if the story's the same as mine. What matters is that I really talk about what the experience is. And actually my daughter, in the wake of what has happened in Saskatchewan, and all of these boys and the team losing their lives and fighting for their lives in the hospital, like minutes from where I'm sitting, my daughter actually wrote an Instagram post, because she is now not directly connected, but she has best friends at university that are these boys' best friends. And she is now taking what she's learned in this grief journey of hers over the year and helping them walk through it. And in her Instagram post, she actually referenced the book, and she said, it taught me how to live with my grief. And I'll tell you, I didn't even know she'd actually read the book. She asked for it about a month ago, because of course I've been talking to her for a year, right? And that's really like what I wanted it to do, is just like, there's somebody there who understands what you're going through, right? Whether it's a divorce, because a divorce can create a loss in meaning, whether it's the loss of someone close to you, the loss of your health, right? Any sort of significant loss in your life, there's a journey that happens to recreate meaning.
Are you surprised by the, because again, for me, like I feel like I'm good at like just sensing things. And when I read your book, it was beyond like, this is my really good friend. It was just like, there's really something here. Like there's something very special in what you're sharing with your stories, which for sure, there's no way you could just go like, here's the steps, 1, 2, 3. Like, no, we're connected by stories, right? And this is why I think it doesn't matter if your story is the different one. Again, for me, different for me with infertility, different for somebody else that's, gone through divorce. I mean, I know you went through that as well too, and talk about it in the book a little bit, but the biggest thing that I really felt was like there was this like bigger impact, and I don't really know if you saw it. Like, so like when the book came out and you're starting to see people like repost stuff and message you and like reviews on Amazon, like were you surprised about it?
Yeah. And you know, it was that's why it was hard to hit publish, because I'm like, well, what will people say? What will be their experience? You know I gave you the book and I knew you'd give me like an honest answer, not of yes, you know, yes, it's good and it wasn't. But what surprised me was actually even more so like the men that connected with the book, because it's this woman talking about, you know, going in and finding out that her baby has died during labor, right? Like, and it's a small part of the book, the story, but I think that it was just everything that I wanted it to be, which is why it took me so long to put out there, was what it ended up being, because I wanted people to just see how they could live because of what the message is, right? Like I wanted to talk about the fact that grieving is not a set of stages, that, you know what, grief, I still grieve for my daughter. It's just the wound isn't raw, right? Like grief doesn't really totally go away, but nobody talks about that. And so when I'm hearing back from these people and they're saying to me, like, you're saying things that I'm experiencing that nobody else understands, that was my pure hope, but you don't know if that's going to be the result. So yeah, like I took a deep breath in when I started seeing the Amazon reviews, because it was doing what I wanted for people, because this was just about serving, right? I never like came along that I need to be an author. Like I'm a business strategist who got thrown into a curveball of life because my baby died and I decided to never go back to my corporate job. And then it's like, what am I going to do though? How am I going to serve? And I've just kind of been following this call of my soul ever since, not knowing what will unfold next, right? And certainly a book was never on my mind until a year ago, and I'm like, I need to write down what this is, because if it helps one person, it was worth all of the hours to go through, right? It is like, I never understood why my baby died until I had to walk my daughter through the death of her best friend, because I knew exactly how she was feeling. I wouldn't have understood otherwise what it was like, what that experience is like, of like the world no longer feeling normal, right? And how you move through that. And so it's that whole idea of yes, it's hitting more than I expected it to, but it's also hitting everything I wanted it to, so that people feel supported in their journey, right, of life. And then how do you move through it? And it's also like seeing somebody who's done it, right? Like, you know, when my baby died, you know, they grieved for me and with me, but I looked to those people who'd gone through the same experience, because they knew what I was feeling when you go in at 38 and a half weeks in labor and you walk out with a box, right? Like the people that understand that are the people who've walked through that. Otherwise, you can't understand what it's like to wait for that elevator and get home and pack up that baby's room and decide when you're going to do that, and how are you going to tell your 7-year-old that their sister isn't coming home, right? And even in a divorce, until you've gone through a divorce, you don't understand what divorce feels like. Hell, I chose my divorce and I grieved, right? Like that was a choice, you know, having a significant illness until you've walked through it. And so it's like being able to share with people how I felt and how I moved through it. They just say like, you know what I'm going through, and they feel supported in that. And that's been an amazing gift to hear back, but also to give, which I guess is inevitably why I wrote it.
And it's like, you know, loss, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for me, again, not having your experience, having my experiences. We all just have our own experiences, right? I can imagine that it's kind of like at the beginning, like people kind of like, they're there for you and stuff. And then it's like, what do you do? What's the you know, there's no, like you said, there's no steps of grief. There's no like, well, then you go here and then next week will be this. And it's this very unknown, and the way that you describe it in the book, then Jill, again, is like, it's like nothing's really the same anymore. And so where do you go when the life that you knew to be true is not the life that you currently have? That the situations, the people that you have or had in your life, there's just not, like, what do you move forward? And so, like, again, I mean, I got to reference back, right, with Humboldt and stuff, because that's where a lot of people are right now, especially here in Canada. And so, like, what are some things, not that I want you to be this, like, here's the 3 steps, right? But like, for you, what was the piece? We'll talk, you know, specifically about when Cassidy died. Like, what was the piece for you when you're like, okay, I'm experiencing this loss, like clearly, right? I'm mourning, I'm grieving what's going on. Like, what was it in you that said, like, I just need to begin to take a step forward, whatever that looks like? What was it that started that for you? Because I think for a lot of people, that'll kind of be the question, right? It's actually, but it's like, what was that thing for you? It could be different for other people. That again, you just said, like, I need to look for something deeper in this.
Well, I think even now, it's just a matter of like, you know, I sat down on Monday at my desk and I had called my mother and I said, like, is anything I'm working on mattering now? Because of the impact I was feeling from all of these losses here, because I know how those people are feeling. You know, loss next, right? And that's what you just have to start looking for. And really, it goes back to the beginning of it is going through the motions. Like, I don't know if I didn't write about it in the book. I actually just wrote an article this morning, but like the next day I got up and I did my hair and I put my makeup on just because that's what I did every day, right? And then I had to go and tell my 7-year-old her sister had died. I don't remember the rest of it, but I just remember I just decided every day that I was gonna live somehow. And it's like going through the motions until all of a sudden one day you're like, oh my God, I smiled today, like spontaneously. And then you feel guilty because you smiled, right? And then all of a sudden there's a laugh and you feel guilty about that. But the one thing that really stuck with me, and I talk about this quite a bit, and it is the first thing, one of the very first things I told my daughter, and it is the thing that has carried me through my illness, carried me through my daughter dying, was when I got back to my house at midnight that night. My mom was already in Calgary with us. My dad had left his tractor like in the field when he heard the news. And I hadn't seen them. I hadn't seen my mom since the afternoon. She left before our daughter was born. And I hadn't seen my dad at all. I'd only phoned him in the morning to tell him. And I walked in and he hugged me, which we're not huggers. So like, I don't remember how much, but I was like, you know, it wasn't our thing. And I knew he had been thinking about, you know, it all day. And he's a man of very few words. And he said to me, here's what I feel. The grief can't outweigh the joy. And that is what got me through every day, was I had to remember that the grief wasn't going to outweigh the joy of the 9 months of planning for that baby, of what that experience was. In my illness, the grief wasn't going to outweigh the joy of what I could do with my kids every day. And even now I can't do what I did before, but I can do a lot of things. I took my daughter's face in my hands and I said, I don't know why this is happening to you, but you need to remember the joy that that boy brought you every single day. And even when he drove you crazy, what it was. And it really was that carried me through that first bit of not knowing. And then it just was a matter of a commitment to live. And I didn't know what that looked like, and I just followed what I felt like I needed to do. And for some people, that becomes very clear very fast, of like this purpose that they're going to fulfill, right? A lot of it is like, you live for that person you've lost, right? If you choose to. And that's the biggest thing is I made a very conscious choice when I left the hospital that day, that this wasn't going to take me down. I was going to choose to rise, right? And you can choose to rise in a divorce, and you can choose to rise in an illness, and you can choose to rise in anything significant. Hell, a significant job loss can throw you into the grief and the void, right? And it's just a matter of committing to the fact that you are here and you've got to live through this, right? And as you do that, meaning will get created again as you continue to move. But nothing will be the same because you're no longer the same. And I think it's really accepting that, is you can't go back, but all you want to do is go back, right? Except all you have is moving forward.
Mm-hmm. So here's something that's come up for me then too with this conversation, Jill, is like, I find there's people in the world like you and I, a lot of the producers and the creators of the world, and this is not to say we're like better, it's just different, right? Where it's like, there's something almost like we have within us. I don't know, maybe it was taught to us or like we're around people that are like that, where we're just like, I'm going to find a way. I'm going to see something in this, however painful, right? As your dad so wisely said, like, don't let the joy, don't let the pain outweigh the joy. Don't let the grief outweigh the joy, right? But there'll be, some people that are either like in a space or have, so I'll give you like an example. We talked about health. It was so interesting you bring this up about health, because I know your struggles with adrenal fatigue and all the stuff that you went to and you talk about in the book. But, with my husband's diagnosis of Crohn's, and it's like, there are pieces that I can't quite understand that Ed still goes through on a daily basis that I think is exactly that. And he often wants to kind of hold on to like how he was before. And I think that unless you really do like just accept that and go like, man, like this thing happened and I have to find a new way to exist in this new world with this new thing that's happened to me, that I almost see that people get stuck in a loop. And I'll see this with love. I'm talking about this with my husband, Ed, because I know how challenging it's been for him over the years, emergency surgery and all sorts of stuff that he feels every day. But like, unless there can just kind of be like, there's a newer me in this whole experience, it's just this loop and a loop and a loop. Even like women that I coach, if they've had like a divorce or they've had a loss or they've been abused growing up, they're just stuck in this space where they cannot move forward. And so I don't know if there's something that, that would help spark some of those people, or if it's just, I don't know if that's something that's teachable. Not teachable is the wrong word, Jill, but is there any kind of like insight that you could possibly say people, they just kind of feel like they're in that loop and they can't get out? Yeah. It's like, do you know what I'm getting at with this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think, when my baby died, it was really about, I had to show my daughter the way out of this, right? And my family. And so I just really chose to do that. I'm like, I got to stand up here because I have to show them how we're going to walk through this. When it comes to my health and things like that, I know the loop because you get into the loop and you can definitely stay there. And even with my health journey, as I continue to get more and more healthy, I'm always having to switch up the protocol. And I get tired of having to think about what I'm eating and having to like do a certain routine every day just to feel good. Like, I get it. It sucks. Like, if you really want to know the truth, except for the fact that I get to live this life and I'm happy to be here. So what am I going to do with it? And it all is truly, it becomes this whole mindset thing of, when I get into a situation where I start running a story, I drift away from what I know I need to be doing. I just go straight into what is the good that is happening in my life right now. Right? And it's a matter of what is the good in this situation. Well, I'm still here. I get to take my kids to activities. I feel better than I did 2 years ago. Like, take the damn pills, get over yourself, eat that thing, and move on. Right? And it's a very just conscious choice of deciding how you're going to think and feel about it. Because the moment you can think about it differently or look for the gift in it, or even if there's no gift in what you're currently experiencing, look for the gift in some other part of your life, it changes how you show up. Right? And that's what you have to do, right? In grief, when you're looking at a loss and stuff, there's months there. Like, I don't remember a lot. Like, I showed up and lived every day, but like the days are hazy. My daughter said to me, we were talking about the first few weeks, and she's like, I don't remember anything. Like, I'm telling her people that came to the house and she has no idea. You know what I mean? So you've got a journey there that you've got to come out of. And then it's like, there comes a point where it's like, you remember more and you've got to start living more again. But it just is, it's a decision. It's a choice to live. It's a choice to accept it. And when I say accept it, I don't mean I like any of it. I don't like the fact my baby died. I don't like the fact I had to walk my daughter through the loss of her best friend at 18 years old. Like, that has changed her for life at a very young age. I don't like the fact that my health deteriorated to a point that I don't feel like I can still get on an airplane or whatever it is. But I accept the reality of what is. And when you can accept the reality of what is, you can move forward much easier. Mm-hmm. I don't like the fact I got divorced. I chose the divorce. I was like, white picket fence, 2 kids, whatever. Divorcee was never on the list of things I was going to do in my life. But the thing is not a lot of this is. But this is what life is, Like the reality is there's people watching this, there's people who are going to hear this on the podcast, and they have all been through something, right? Like you're not alone in it. And I think when you realize that, you can look to other people to help you pull you through too. And you know what? There's also a lot worse experiences than what you're going through. You know, and that was partly writing the book. I'm like, is any of this bad enough to talk about when I think about what other people are going through, right? And then I'm like, if it can help one person, then we'll just do it, right?
It's perspective though, because I mean, you say that just now and I'm like, Jill, your baby died. Like I hear that and I go, I don't know what you know about, sister, because like that's significant stuff that you've been through, right? But I think this is what's coming up for me too, is you're kind of going to this more. It's like maybe the biggest thing, Jill, is when you said something about the white picket fence, right? Where it's like people go, but no. This is the plan I had, right? I go to school and then I get married, then I have the kids, and then you know, and it's like when that changes, and like I don't know anybody where the plan was the plan.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know anybody. But yet maybe that's the whole thing. It's like, this is what people think it's supposed to be like. And so people watching, by the way, too, in the live or even in the recording, because we're going to keep this as a Facebook Live, and then this will be a podcast into next week. But please drop like comments, questions, stuff, so we can kind of engage and interact with you as well. But yeah, maybe that's the thing. People are just like, wait a second, this was the plan. Okay, universe, God, like whatever, higher purpose, or like, you know, don't believe in that, believe in that. Like, I don't think you understand. You got things mixed up. It's not supposed to go down this way, you know? When Ed was diagnosed with Crohn's, they're going like, you're a man in your late 30s, you're healthy, you run marathons, you don't fit the profile of people who get Crohn's disease. Oh, and by the way, you're one of the worst cases we've ever seen. And we're just like, what? Like, this isn't happening. Or like, hey, let's get pregnant. It's like, but we're not getting pregnant. But people are like, I don't understand, but you guys are healthy and you're like, all this kind of stuff, right? It's just, you don't understand at times that there is a bigger plan than your plan. And it can be a faith-based thing or not. I don't really see that it doesn't matter either way, but it's that accepting of like, there's something here for me. And like you said, it sucks. I didn't like it then. I don't like it now, right? And don't put a big bow on it and say everything's great, everything happens for a reason. But it's like, just understand that there's a bigger piece, like you saying, you know, the experience of losing Cassidy and the divorce and with your health allowed you to be able to walk that path with your daughter a year ago, right? Mackenzie's experience is allowing her to walk that path with these young boys who have lost one, two, several friends on that bus, and be a light for them, be a, like, I get you. You know? Mm-hmm. So yeah, maybe that's the biggest thing, is people are just like, but wait a second, this isn't the plan. But the thing is like, there's the plan. Just throw it out the fucking window. It's not going to happen that way. You can have a plan, right? But I think accepting that things are going to change and shift and zig and zag, and you have to be willing to look for the deeper message, right? To look for, like your book, right? To look for, like, what's the meaning in this? There has to be something within here, and I might not find it today or tomorrow or 10 years from now, but there will be something in here that I'm supposed to see, some perspective.
Yeah. Like I will figure out why I needed to go through that. I'll figure out what I used from that experience to allow me to grow, expand who I am, and it'll serve me in some way. Or really, honestly, it'll serve somebody else, is typically how it works out, right? Is that your experience will serve somebody else. You just don't necessarily know what that looks like. And I think you touched on a huge point, because we set like these life goals, and it's supposed to go this way and that way and whatever, and then all of a sudden it doesn't go that way. You know, even when I got sick, I was doing one-on-one consultations, I was doing group presentations, my business was taking off, and all of a sudden it's like, I have to take a year off. I lay on the couch and my doctor says, I don't know if you'll ever get back in a boardroom. And I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to do for work? Because I love my work. I love how I show up. And so I just had to choose that I was going to go online. An opportunity presented itself and I took it. And that's just it is the universe, you know, I believe will line it up for you if you're willing to look. If you're willing to go, yeah, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, but I'm still here now. I have a place in this world. I'm here for a reason, and let me redefine what that looks like, you know? And then you've just got to choose to have some faith. Like, you know, I went to church lots as a child, but you know, religion, it carries people through things. I don't go to church now, but I have a faith in the universe. I have a faith in this life that I have shown up to. I have a faith that it will all be explained somehow. And I have a faith that I can walk through anything because I just know that that's what I'm here to do. Right. And once you've gone through some things like this, your perspective is so different on that. Right. Mm-hmm. Like you can just, the little stuff doesn't matter. Like, it's just like, that's nothing. In perspective to my baby dying, there's not a lot that can really rattle me. Like, even my illness didn't rattle me in the same way that my baby dying did. It just wasn't comparable. The thing that was comparable was last year walking my oldest daughter through. I think that was worse for me than going through it myself, because you can't take somebody's pain away. And that is just one of the hardest things that you can do. So, you know, when somebody's going through something in your life, you can't take their pain away when they've lost their relationship that they thought they were going to have forever, right? You can't take their pain away when they get a diagnosis. But what you can do is you can stand with them, right? If you choose to. And I think that that's just it, is we're each here for something. And if you just recognize it, we all want to have a plan. God, I talk about it all the time with my clients. It's like, what are your 90-day outcomes? What do you want 3 years from now? I set goals and outcomes, and my life has like changed radically through the years, but I still do it because you have to be moving somewhere. But I also know that tomorrow it could all change. Like on Monday, I sat down on my desk and I'm like, is the stuff I'm working on important enough? Is this what I need to share with this world? Is this what I'm here to do? And I'm just willing to move that direction based on what is happening. And I think that's just it, is the more we cling to like this past idea of what we thought it was going to be, the more painful the process is, right? That's where you get stuck. No, I didn't choose to get sick. I didn't want to. I didn't fit the profile either. He's like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I don't know. Right? But it's like, I have a goal now of like, I just want to get on an airplane and take my kids to Hawaii. And like, that's just like mind blowing to me that is something that still is like a big step for me. Whereas 4 years ago, I wouldn't even thought about getting on an airplane. Right? But I just readjusted my direction. I'm like, okay, well, road trip everywhere but Hawaii, because you can't road trip to Hawaii. And my husband's like, okay, we're going to be a family who road trips, right? You've got to choose. I could mourn about that. I could grieve about that. I could be mad about that. But none of that energy allows me to move forward. None of that energy allows me to live fully, and none of that energy serves me. And that's really it, is you've got to decide what will serve you. And that stuff doesn't mean you don't have to grieve. It doesn't mean you're not emotional about it. Like, some days I'm pissed off, right? But then I go to, what do I have? And I have a lot to be grateful for, to be appreciative in my life on a daily basis. So that's how I'm going to live.
Yeah, perspective is a beautiful thing. You know, I was trying to explain this to my oldest boy, Tyson, who's like 7.5. And so, you know, when the biggest challenge is, oh, my iPad died and I got to wait for it to like plug it in and for the Apple to come back. And I'm like, dude, let's have a conversation about this right now, right? But I think we could take a look at that and just go, oh, kids today in tech. We can go that whole crazy conversation, but it's the same thing of like, there comes a time when I think you just have to really take a look and have some perspective as to what's happening, right? You this week on Monday saying like, is what I'm doing important enough, right? But here's something I want to talk about as well then too, is like, so a good friend of mine, his name is Jack, and they lost their 8-year-old grandson, who's named Jackson after Grandpa, and like freak accident. He's on the front lawn. He gets hit by like the next door neighbors who's just backing out. Like, again, something just like completely, you want to talk about the plan not being the plan, right? And this 8-year-old little boy was like the light of their life and just one of those special kids. Kind of like, it sounds a lot like what you described as Mackenzie's friend was like, you know, like everybody just knew this boy. The next door neighbor was his best friend's mom. And like, they're in this little small town, like just devastation beyond, right? And so I remember you know, with Jack and when this happened. And there was a lot of kind of outpouring at the beginning, right? A lot of outpouring at the beginning and sport and stuff. And then having people say, well, shouldn't you be moving on by now, kind of thing. And I think, again, this is back to the thing of like being really, like, people are really uncomfortable with loss and with pain. And it's like, to me, the gift of Mackenzie right now, the gift of sitting with these boys and just being with them, like, not even though she has the experience of a recent loss a year ago, but just like being with somebody, loss or not, like just the fact that somebody gets you and isn't asking you to move forward. Because this is the biggest thing that I know about pain for me in my life, and with clients I've worked with too, Jill, and probably relevant for you, is like, there's gifts in this stuff. And it doesn't feel like it when it's going on. But if I try to speed that up, if I try to like wash it with a bunch of fucking happy juice, then, you know, I take that away from somebody. I rob them of the gift if I try to speed them through, right? So the people that said to Jack, like, Jack, you should be getting through this by now. It was uncomfortable for them to see that, to see him in that kind of pain. A man who normally is like you meet him once, you're like, oh my God, you got to meet this guy, Jack. He's the most incredible human ever. Like, people, like, you know, he has this joy about his life. And then when this happened, it was just like darkness, you know, washed over him. And to just be able to, I remember having several conversations, because this is when I was in practice. And so he also came as a patient as well in the office. And I remember Jack coming in and just being with him, just letting him speak and just like being there for him. But I think that that's something that's really hard. You know, maybe it was hard, obviously, for you with Mackenzie and you kind of knowing what she's going through, but just to have the experience of just like being there for somebody and letting them be in their pain. I don't know how I got to this point. I don't know if I'm just like a freak. I don't know, we're both freaks. I don't really know. But like, to see somebody in pain, it doesn't, I don't feel badly for them. I honor that. I honor that emotion as much as I honor the joy. Like, because I know that they're all pieces of the human experience. Like, they're all there. Like, who am I to say like, well, you shouldn't feel that way, or I feel badly they feel this way, or blah, 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 you know? It's like, let me have them. It's like, I'll see this with my kids too. They're like, oh, I'm hurting and stuff, or that person. And I'm like, there's a little piece inside of me that's like, good, they're having the experience of pain. I know there's something beautiful in that for them. So was that your experience as well too, Jill? That like for a lot of people, whether it was with like when you were on the end of everything that's happening with you, with Mackenzie, or what you're seeing right now in Saskatchewan, is like, people just want to kind of like move through the process. Like they want to like, you know, not have to either experience it themselves, but even more so see others in that space. You know what I'm getting at with this? Like, it's uncomfortable for them to see others in that pain.
Yeah, I think it is, right? It's hard to know what to say. I even talk about this in the book, because it's hard to know what to say to somebody who's grieving. I feel like I don't even at times know what to say myself when I've been through it, but I feel like I have a better perspective because I've been through it. But it's like, you know, when you're grieving and when somebody says, you know, even somebody says, well, there's a bigger plan and they're better off and all that. None of that, well, for me, for some people it might help, doesn't really help. It's like, it doesn't mean anything to me in that first bit of grieving, right? Like, it's like, no, I can't see that right now. Like, I'm in too much pain to look at it. Yes, do I know there's a bigger plan? Fine. But that doesn't bring me any solace right now. That doesn't make the pain any less. So it's a matter of like, when you're going through something, even a divorce or something, right? People try to kind of justify it through because it makes them feel more comfortable. So I would say when you're going through something, it's like being patient with those around you and understanding that like, they just don't know what to say, but they're showing up to love you. It's just their words are really wrong, right? Because they don't necessarily know. They don't understand. And so I'm very analytical by nature. So I really watched what people did around me after my baby died. And like, there's people that I didn't hear from because they couldn't watch me go through it. Right. And I, to be honest, had it fairly together. Like you know, obviously there was tons of tears on my end, but I didn't bring a lot of that to my conversation. Right. Obviously I didn't look okay, and all of it that went on, you know, those closest to me saw my greatest pain, but like they kind of scattered. right? And then people get offended in that situation, and it's like they just don't know how to deal with it. And so there's this whole sensitivity to A, the person who's going through it, but B, to the people who just really don't know what to do. And it's a matter of, you just need to show up. You just need to love them through it. And you can't choose for them their experience. And I talk about that in the book. Is like somebody's experience with grief and the void and walking through some sort of loss in their life, whatever it is their experience. You can't rush it along for them. You want to make sure you're supporting them. Obviously, if they're not okay, like, you got to go see a professional if you're not good. That all gets very offered up when you lose anybody, when you lose a baby. I didn't feel like I needed to, but I knew it was there if I needed, right? With Mackenzie, it was like, if you need to see somebody, like, we'll go see somebody. Like, whatever you need, this is your journey. Like, and it was a matter of, there's people around me that are like, they think she should be even better than she is. And I'm like, you know what? She's forever changed by this. This may be as good as it gets. Like, I don't know. I'm just willing to accept what is right before me each and every day. You know, every year, so that'll be 12 years this June. Every year my mom phones me on the morning of my daughter dying, because my mom isn't, well, I don't think since that day she hasn't been with me. She was with me the first year, but that was it. She phones. And some days I'm on the phone all day with her, not holding it together. And it could be year 2, year 4, year 7, like every year she's like, and now a couple days before, she's like, how do you think you're going to feel? Right? And some years I'm completely good, and other years I am like a raging mess for the whole day. It is a day I'd like to cross off the calendar forever. But my mom just shows up, right? Last year she's like, how do you think you're going to feel? I'm like, Mom, I can't even talk about it this year, because I was dealing with Mackenzie, right? And I just needed to stand for her. It didn't matter how I was feeling last year, right? But I don't even know. It catches me by surprise. And like, this is 11 years later. And June 14th of this year, I don't know. I might be a raging mess, or I'll be fine. I just allow it to be whatever it is. But that's, and that's what grief is like, right? Like, for some people, this is something you carry with you. And so when you're on the outside looking in, or you're walking with somebody, yeah, you can't choose for them. You can't choose for them because you don't know their experience, right? Even me, I can speak into it, but I don't know somebody else's experience. Right? Like, some people can be okay within a month or two. Even me, like the doctors, some people thought I was in denial. And I'm like, I'm not in denial, but I just know I've got to choose to live, because I've got a 7-year-old at home and I've got a life to do, right? But do I want her back? Yeah, every day. And that doesn't change. It's every day for almost 12 years, right? Like, it doesn't go away. You know, my doctor said to me, I wanted to have a C-section when I heard that she had died during labor. And he's like, no, we can't. We're not. You got to deliver naturally. I'm like, I can't deliver naturally. Like, you have lost your mind, dude. Like, no. And he's like, Jill, you need to try. And I'm like, no. Like, I was fighting with him, and I was like, no. Like, there was no way. And he's like, I don't want you to have a scar on your body, because you will carry a scar on your heart forever. So he said, I need you to try. And if you can't do it when we get going, because they had to restart labor, then I will do that for you. Right? And he was right. It's a scar on your heart forever. It doesn't go away. Right? And everybody wants it to. And I think that's what people don't understand, is like, it's not raw anymore, but it doesn't go away. It took me like almost 11 years to do this, because I wasn't ready to talk about it that much. It's a long time, right? And so, yeah, you can't choose for somebody how they're going to go through something. You can support them. You want them to live their life. If they need help, you've got to, encourage them to go down that road. But don't decide for them what their grief journey is going to look like. Mm-hmm. Just stand with them. And you don't have to say anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's such a gift. Just to let people be where they be. There's a greater thing, I think, with just the human experience of like, let me just, like, I see you in what you're in. I can't feel you. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know where you're supposed to be, but I see you where you are right now, and I honor what you need to be in, period.
Yep.
And I think we can, you know, like honestly, like this message of loss can be applied to so many things, which is why I think, Jill, that your book is going to and should be having a greater impact, which is the reason I really want to do this interview as well too, because I think there are so many principles that aren't just connected to loss, but it just what is it again, like we were talking before, like what happens when life just doesn't work out the way it's supposed to work out, you know?
Yeah. And that's really what the book is about. It just happens to tell the story of how my life didn't work out the way I thought it would.
Yeah.
There's no white picket fence. I didn't think I would have, 4 kids and only 3 with me. I didn't think that my health would take a dive, and I certainly didn't think I'd find myself on an acreage in Saskatchewan, because I was going to be in a corner office somewhere with 1.2 kids doing whatever, right? And I didn't think I would have written a book, but I'm just willing to go along for the ride of what is. It's an interesting book to have written because you're dealing with a topic where, people have lost something. It doesn't matter what. And it's like people are like, you're not marketing it a lot. Like, you're a marketing strategist. I'm like, I know, but it's like, I just think of the book as someone will read it and they'll share it on to the next person and the next person as they need to hear and see it. Right? Because I'm not about, sorry.
No, you go ahead, Jill, finish.
Well, it's like you're dealing with somebody's pain, right? And I'm like, I'm not going to exploit somebody's pain. But I'm going to put it out there because I know that there'll be somebody who hears this that knows somebody that they'll send the book to. I know that you've done that. You've sent the book to people you barely know, right? Yeah. And I've got responses back from him, right? Amazing ones of like, this helped me see it a little differently. You understand where I'm at. And you know what? As humans, that's all we want to know, is that somebody understands where we're at. I have a story. My daughter was, of course, talking with these boys this week, and this one boy said to her, he said, my best friend died 3 years ago. And he said, today is the first day where I've talked to somebody and I know that you know exactly how I feel. He goes, thank you so much for sharing it with me. And I'm like, we just all want to feel heard and be understood. Yeah. And if this book does that for people, then it was worth every hour and every incident. It was worth, the health issues. It was worth my baby dying so that somebody else feels heard.
All right, that's a wrap. I was thinking, where are we going to end this conversation right now? But I think that's exactly it, Jill. That's exactly it. And what I was starting to interject with before is you and I had the conversation before we started this recording of how do we kind of say get the book without it being like you said, no, get the book because this has happened and this is how it's happening in Saskatchewan or our country, all this kind of stuff. But I don't give a shit. Get the fucking book. It is a book that I think you need to read. I read it because it was, because it was you, Jill, right? But I didn't think I would have as many things that I read in it that just hit me right in my heart of, man, this is, you just need to read the book. I'm gonna leave it at that. I have no other words to say for that. But is there anything else, Jill, that you would like to add, as we finish up? But I think, again, regardless of what's happening in our nation right now, this is a conversation that needs to keep being had because there will always be loss in life. There will always be things not going according to the plan. And so how are we going to choose to live our life? Because our life it's a gift. It's a gift. And everybody's going through experiences which are similar, but just have different wrapping on the outside. And the more that we do spend time to connect, to allow people to be who they're going to be, and to see people and honor them where they are, to me, that's what life is about. It's the bigger thing of just I just want to feel connected to other people.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that I want people to know in any stage of what they're going through, which isn't what they expected in their life, is that they're not alone. That there's people out there who've walked your path that you can look to, that you can see that they were able to move forward, and to know that there are people right now going through what you're going through. And that the people around you, while they may not understand, they love you more than anything and they're showing up for you. And that's just it, is you are heard, you are seen, and you are truly not alone in this. So don't feel like you are, because it's a very lonely space to be in after these sorts of experiences. But know that know that you have a lot of life left to live. You just have to choose to see the beauty in what can lie before you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
The best.
I appreciate
Love and
you.
appreciate you, sister. So what I'll do for everyone watching too, as soon as we finish this out, I'll put the link. If you listen to the podcast episode, I'll put the link in the show notes so you can pick up Jill's book. And, you know, if there's also somebody that you know that's going through a lot of stuff right now, loss, that get as many copies as you need to and send them the book. Because when I did this with Jill's referring to a gentleman that I just kind of through like Instagram and stuff and saw what was happening and knew about him through a group that he's associated with that we are. And it was like, oh my gosh, I just need to say, I'm like, I know this is really weird, but can you send me your address? Can I send you something? And he was like, yeah, that'd be great. And created like such a beautiful part of his healing process. So I honor you, Jill, for writing your book and sharing all these stories. And yeah, I just really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you giving me a platform to talk about it.
Love you, sister. Okay, so I'm going to drop the link and I will talk to you later. Okay,
bye.
All right, sister. So my intention was that this brought you some real value. Longer episode, obviously, today, but just an incredible conversation with Jill, and I'm really thankful for having her be on this podcast episode. So here are some things for you to do. Number one, pick up a copy of Jill's book. Okay, if you go onto Amazon, amazon.ca or .com, the book is called When the Meaning is Lost by Jill Ethier, Ethier. You can also search by her name and in the show notes. So if you don't have, lost yourself, there's going to be somebody that you know or someone you can think of right now and buy a copy for them as well. I really do feel this is beyond Jill being my very dear friend. And you don't really hear me promote and pitch other people's stuff and buy their book. And this is the first time I've ever really done that. And the reason why is because I know how impactful that her book is going to be. And I just know more people need to find it. So here is my gift to you with that. So go get her book on Amazon. Number two, make sure to subscribe to the newsletter. So when we have special events, so like this special interview with Jill, my next live events will be coming up sometime later in 2018. You're going to get on the VIP access list. I'm also going to see the More for Action guide, which is really teaching you how to start your day in power, as well as 2 video trainings that were exclusive to a Facebook group that I have called The Experience. So you're going to get those as well. So go head over to drkarenosborne.com/action guide so you can get hooked up on that newsletter today. Next thing is make sure to subscribe. Make sure to join the sisterhood. Okay, you can now sign up to the sisterhood for just $1 for the first 7 days. This is a way for you to be around other women who are like you, who want the same powerful things within your marriage, within your relationship with your children, with your body, and with your business and spirituality. So that's over at drkarenosborne.com/sisterhood. And number 3, I launched the Women Wanting More store about 4 weeks ago. So this is really exciting to be able to have a line of clothing for you to wear who you are. This means so much more than simply words on a tank top, a t-shirt, a beanie, a mug, and a hoodie. These words really mean something. As part of the culture, as part of being here, part of the Women Wanting More tribe. So head over to shop.womenwantingmore.com, and when you head to the checkout, enter in the discount code podcast10. PODCAST 10, and I will make sure that you get 10% off your entire order, and shipping is also on me. So that's at shop.womenwantingmore.com. So I will talk to the next episode, sister. A life of more is just one step away from you doing the fucking work every single day. I love and appreciate you.
To get the show notes of each Women Wanting More episode, including the How to Get More tip, subscribe to the newsletter at drkarenosborne.com/newsletter.